I love it. I love it. Wow, I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
What's up, guys? Leighton here for UFC Gambling Addicts, back again with another UFC full card breakdown and prediction video. Before we go any further, I'd like to remind you, please armbar the like button, maybe even a flying armbar if you've got it in ya. Show no mercy on that like button. Now, I want to get into a few comments, and then after the comments I want to speak a little bit about UFC 247, and then we're going to jump into this card. So, first comment, Jared McLean. I love how MMA and getting blitzed brings so many people together. Got some big balls picking against Jones, but I respect it. I think the Santos fight was a wake-up call for Jones. I hope he's reflected over him winning a narrow decision against a man with no legs. And I hope he's able to not underestimate Reyes. Well, amen to your first statement on getting blitzed and MMA bringing so many people together. Yeah, man, John Jones once again showed us why he's such a dominant champion in that 4th and 5th round. Massive credit to Mr. Reyes, though, and I'd like to speak a little bit more about that main event after a few more comments. Tom Butler, so glad I came across this channel. Only recently started getting into watching UFC and betting on it. Awesome to know a little more about the fighters and understanding their styles and their backgrounds in an open, non-biased way makes it so much more fun. Love this channel, thanks. Well, amen to you, Mr. Tom Butler. I love breaking down fights, making predictions. It's what I do, man. You know, it's very tough every fight because of the appreciation you have for these fighters, but I love to do it. You know, as long as I'm alive and kicking, I'm going to speak about these fights. Whether your name's Casey Kenney, Conor McGregor, John Jones, or even Jeremy Kimball, you know, I'm going to follow your career and I'm going to watch you evolve. That's what I love to do. Sandman 62-100. My 6-pack parlay, Derek Lewis, Kaylin Williams, Andre Ewell, Trevin Giles, John Jones, Journey Newson. Amen to that. That's a beautiful parlay. I'm sure a few of you guys are going to be saying in the comments, you know, you was lucky on a couple fighters, but still, you know, if you see Sandman in the comments, give him a thumbs up, because that's a beautiful parlay, my friend. Eric Malone, Lee has the accolades, but not real sure she likes getting punched. Rolling with Lucky Lauren. Okay, man, you cashed that bet. I'll give you credit there, and it was a very decent fight as well. But when that third judge was reading out 30-27, only one fighter popped into my mind for that 30-27, and it wasn't Lauren Murphy. But credit to her, man. You know, she's tough as nails. She'll eat your shots to give her shots. She's not going to slow down in there. She has decent wrestling, good jiu-jitsu. She's a warrior, you know. She's going to eat your shots, keep coming forward. Credit to her. Okay, last comment before we get into speaking about UFC 247. Ted Rep, you got some big balls to go against the greatest. Much respect to you, sir. Okay, so that's going to lead us into the main event. And I know a few of you are going to say Dom Reyes won that decision. I know a few of you are going to say John Jones won that decision. But what we can all agree on was how good that fight was. You know, it's such a good main event. I took Dominic Reyes. I stuck by it all week. I took him by decision. You know, the TKO I really felt wasn't as probable as the decision. You know, Dom has a great left hand, but John's seen it all before. You know, he's seen a lot of good left hands. To see Dom go out there and perform in round 1 and round 2 the way I pictured it, you know, it's so pleasing, so pleasing to see him do that. 7 takedowns John Jones attempted, you know, 6 defended, and with the 1 takedown John Jones did get, Dom popped straight back to his feet. So yeah, his performance really pleasing. If you're going to ask me how I scored the fight, John Jones round 4 and round 5 for sure. Dom Reyes round 1, round 2 for sure. Like I could debate you with that, but you really wouldn't change my mind. For sure, I have those rounds down for those guys. Round 3 is the debatable round. You know, that's really the 50-50 round, and you know you want that 5th round to be the 50-50 round that gets people guessing, especially the judges going up against John Jones. Although scoring isn't like that, we do score round by round. Round 3 is the 50-50 round. Now, if I'm giving you my honest thoughts like I always do, I really did have 2-1 after the 3rd round. I felt John Jones won his first round after round 3. So yeah, in all honesty, man, if you're looking at my scorecard, John Jones 48-47, but that does not take away from Dom Reyes. That man has an extremely bright future. Massive credit to that man. You know, his performance was amazing, and it opened a lot of people's eyes onto how good Dom Reyes really is. Okay, so let's get into this next card. I don't really want to speak about the bad decisions. You guys know the bad decisions from that card. As for bets, not a good card, obviously. But we're looking to get a decent, profitable card on this one. So let's go. And just a heads up to anybody who didn't know, this fight night is going to be fought at high elevation, roughly 5,000 feet above sea level. So we do need to factor that into a few of our predictions on this card. That 3rd round really could be the difference in a couple of these fights. And you know, fighting 5,000 feet above sea level, you're going to have good conditioning. So we really have to think about that on this card. Also, before we start with the first fight, the UFC Gambling Addicts t-shirt that I was giving away, I am going to reveal the winner for that in the smoke break, so stay tuned. Okay, first fight, we're going to have Mark De La Rosa versus Julian Paiva, and we're going to start with Mark. So Mark comes into this fight 2 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a BJJ fighter, a black belt to be precise. His striking hasn't really evolved too much over the years. He doesn't really commit to his punches and his kicks as much as he could. But like I said, man, he's a BJJ fighter. You know, he'd rather be on the mat. Also, he's been in there with guys like Kara France and Alex Perez. You know, those guys have great boxing and they hit very hard. So kind of understandable that Mark De La Rosa wouldn't commit too much to his punches in those fights. You know, doesn't really sit down on the punch too much. He does like to open up with some low calf kicks. That usually gets his striking going. But like I said, man, doesn't really commit too much to his striking. The opponent, Julian Paiva, comes into this fight 0 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. This guy is also a BJJ practitioner, a purple belt to be precise. Has a good frame for the 125 division. He will have the height and reach advantage in this fight. So he has got that on his advantage. And looking at this guy, you know, he really doesn't compare to a guy like Kara or Alex Perez. You know, Julian doesn't hold the same power what Mark De La Rosa has been up against. You know, he's more technical, more patient with his striking, isn't going to hold that power. So it is going to be very interesting to see who wins the striking battle between these guys, because they both naturally are BJJ practitioners. And it's also going to be interesting to see who gets the takedown, because Mark De La Rosa, he goes for takedowns here and there, but very rarely does he end up on top. You know, he's mainly on the bottom. You know, Kara dumped him at one point. Alex Perez beat him up badly on top. And Julian Paiva, I believe, even came close to taking the back of Kara in that fight. So it's going to be interesting to see who has the better grappling, who has the better striking. Like I said, De La Rosa a black belt, Julian a purple belt, and it's hard to gauge who's going to be the more confident guy on the feet. Personally, I'm leaning towards the experience in this one. I think Mark De La Rosa coming out with that low calf kick could be a problem for Julian. and maybe he even gets a takedown and ends up on top in this fight. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Mark De La Rosa via decision. So taking a look at the odds in the first fight, we have Mark De La Rosa coming in at plus 175, plus 180. Rulian coming back minus 200. Those are very interesting odds. First thoughts seeing that, man. Surely a lot of people on Rulian are picturing him being the better striker in there. And that's interesting. I do remember Rulian having that fight against Bontorin, and he opened him up nicely with a patient, composed strike. And then Bontorin opened him up after. So, yeah, very interesting, man, because Mark De La Rosa has been in there with guys who have very good boxing, you know, real power in their punches, and I don't feel that when I watch Rulian fight. I see more composure. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to watch these two guys fight. But it looks like I'm going to be starting off my night with a plus 175 underdog. Decent. Moving into fight number 2, we have Macy Chiasson versus Shana the Shanimal Young. And we're going to start with Macy Chiasson. So Macy comes into this fight 3 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Training out of Fortis MMA. She's a very, very big girl for the 135 division. Macy has fought at 145, dropped down to 35, man, and she's an absolute beast here. Standing at 5'9" with a 72-inch reach. I've always called this girl the female MGK. Like, I really see the similarities between her and MGK, and it's cool to see her fight, man. Like, I really believe in this girl, and I know there's going to be a lot of people this week that say, oh, Macy Chiasson's a bum, Macy couldn't beat Lena Landsberg and all of this stuff, but in reality, she's a very young girl. She's still learning her trade, and experiences like that make you a better fighter. You know, not everyone is Floyd Mayweather of boxing. You know, not everyone is John Jones of MMA. You do suffer defeats, and that's going to make you a better fighter. But Macy, you know, since stepping down to 135, she's basically a bully. You know, she's looking to grab you. She's looking to put you against the fence. Her punches have real power, real meaning to her punches. The way she put out Gina Mazzani was nasty, man. Her jiu-jitsu on the ground is pretty awkward to deal with because she has pretty long legs. Now, I don't like to see her accept bottom position. Against Lena, you know, she really didn't try to accept that bottom position. She was trying to get up, but you know, she became exhausted having that grueling battle up against the fence. Losses and experiences like that make you a better fighter, and Macy's at a great camp in Fortis MMAs, and yeah, I really believe she can go on to win another few fights inside the octagon and really shush those haters up. Now, she was originally supposed to fight Nico Montana, and that was an extremely tough pick to make for me. I was going to go with Macy because I really do believe in this girl. But she's now fighting Shana Young, and she's making her UFC debut. We saw her recently on the Contender Series, fought against Sarah Alper. She lost that fight. And if you don't know about Shana Young, I don't really know too much myself, but what I do know is she's more of a kicker than a puncher. Her groundwork isn't the greatest. She does need to work on that. Her takedown defense isn't the best either. And from when I watch this girl fight on the feet, I don't feel danger in her punches. I feel danger in her kicks. And I just don't think on, you know, a few days' notice that's going to be enough to get past Macy Chiasson. Macy Chiasson's a very big girl, and I know Lena Landsberg was able to bully her in the clinch after that first round, but I don't see many girls doing that. I really think Macy could shine in the clinch. Pretty much anywhere this fight goes, I think Macy can handle Shana Young. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Macy Chiasson, and I'm going to take her to get a submission in round number 2. Now, I doubt we have any odds for this fight, and I have no clue who the underdog was in the original one, because those have gone now as well. So let me know, was Macy the underdog against Nico? Because if she was, that was 2 underdogs in a row for me. But I'm imagining she's going to be at least minus, I'm going to say -2 potentially against Shana Young. Fight number 3, and this is a really, really, really good fight. I love this matchup. Casey Kenney versus Merab Dvalishvili. Casey Kenney comes into this fight 2-0 inside the UFC. 9-time national judo champion. Looking back at Casey Kenney's 2 fights in the UFC, he won both of those fights through hard work. You know, real hard work inside the octagon. The debut against Ray Borg. I took Ray Borg in that fight. I know quite a few of you took Ray Borg in that fight too. And that's a really, really close fight to score. You know, really tough one heading into that 3rd round. And you could say Ray Borg potentially won that 3rd round. But watching it back, man, there is a case for Casey Kenney, right? There is a case. Hard worker, man. Real hard worker. His scrambling was beautiful to watch. Just kept going, you know, even on the feet, bouncing in that 3rd round, letting Ray Borg know, you know, this is a grueling contest and I'm here to match you every step of the way. And credit to Casey Kenney in that debut. Now he stepped up against Manny Bermudez in his next one. And Manny Bermudez may not be the grinder of Ray Borg, but Manny Bermudez is an extremely strong BJJ practitioner. And once again, Casey Kenney, brilliant scrambling in that fight, ended up on top for the first 2 rounds. Only in the 3rd round did Manny Bermudez really press forward and actually became a striker in that fight. You know, so Casey Kenney, very, very good grappling so far inside the UFC. His opponent, Merab Dvalishvili, comes into this fight 2-2 inside the UFC, training under Matt Sierra and Ray Longo. Merab is primarily a wrestler. You know, he's trained in Sambo and Judo from a young age. And I've seen very good improvements in this guy's game. You know, he's always been good at getting the opponent to the mat. He's always been good at getting the takedown. But he hasn't been great at securing the takedown. Now, if you look at the fight against Terry Amoir, he was able to secure the takedown a bit more in that fight. And then you see the fight against Brad Katona, even better, you know. So he's improving the ability to secure the takedown, not only to get the takedown each and every time he goes for it, because that's also a positive ability in a wrestler, you know, that relentlessness of the takedown. If you can get 1 and 2, and 2 becomes 5, that's very impressive. But what's also impressive is 1 takedown and securing that and not needing another one. So it goes both ways. Also, Merab has really impressed me in his last 2 fights with his volume of kicks. He is constantly going high or low with his kicks. And you know he carries power in his hand. And it's almost like you don't know what he's going to do. Is he going to use that relentless wrestling? Is he going to shoot? Is he going to throw high kicks, low kicks? Is he going to come over the top with an overhand? It's really hard to get a read on this guy. He's so crazy inside the octagon. And that's why I'm really looking forward to this matchup, because Casey Kenney has really displayed nice grappling and good scrambles inside the octagon so far. So looking at this matchup, I see a grueling grappling contest. I see a lot of scrambling, a lot of takedowns, a lot of fighting up against the fence. And man, Casey Kenney really has impressed me with what he's done so far, but the relentlessness of Merab is something that's just a little different to Ray Borg and Manny Bermudez. Both those guys, great grapplers, but Merab just feels a little different. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Merab Dvalishvili via decision. And we check the odds on that fight. We have Merab coming in -160. Casey Kenney getting some respect. plus 120, plus 130, plus 140, plus... Okay, so we're completely all over the board with that fight. We haven't really got our thoughts together as a community, guys. But yeah, that fight's a little crazy with the odds. But I understand it, you know. Some lines are small for Kenney. Some lines are a bit higher with the plus money. And that's understandable. This guy has been impressive. And Merab is also very impressive. But at minus 160, I'll be going with Merab on that one. Moving into the next one, we have Ray, the Mexican Devil Borg versus Rogerio Bontorin. And this is another very, very decent matchup from the UFC. We'll start with Ray Borg. So Ray comes into this fight 6 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. He's fought some very, very good competition over the years. Demetrius Johnson being one of those guys. Pretty much dominated in that fight, but when you hang in there for 25 minutes, you learn a lot from a great fighter like that. So Ray Borg, you know, he's that gritty type of fighter. He's always going to get in your face, look to make it that grueling battle. His condition is 10 out of 10. Just a well-rounded guy, you know, just a grinder. You know, if he sees you slow down, he's going to feed off of that. That's the type of guy that Ray Borg is, you know. And I refer to the Casey Kenney fight just a minute ago. Ray Borg also impressed me a lot in that fight, not just Casey Kenney. You know, Ray Borg was really showing me once again, this guy is so tough to beat. You know, so that decision really could have gone either way. I wouldn't say it was a loss for Ray Borg because both guys, man, just competed in such an exhausting, beautiful fight to watch for the viewer. So yeah, that's Ray Borg, man. He's going to be the same type of guy. He's going to look for takedowns. He's always going to be willing to scramble with you. He's going to wear his heart on his sleeve inside the octagon. He's going to look to be that guy. The opponent, Rogerio Bontorin, comes into this fight 2-0 inside the UFC. A black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's his bread and butter. Now, his striking isn't the best we've ever seen inside the octagon, but it's very clear to see this guy holds a lot of power in his punches. You know, a little bit like Darko Stosic, right? Because we recently broke him down against Jamal Hill, and a lot of people were on Darko. But Darko's bread and butter is judo. But it's clear to see the guy holds extreme power in his hands. If he clips you, you're going to sleep. But what happens when your bread and butter is a grappling art, and now you're throwing heavy leather inside the octagon? It's always going to go one of two ways. If the guy can clip you with that power, it's going to look beautiful. If a lot of those powerful loose bombs miss, you're going to become very laboured and very fatigued. And we've seen that from a guy like Darko Stosic. And in my opinion, we have seen that from Bontorin. Although he hasn't lost inside the UFC, we have seen that. I saw it against Magomed Biblatov in the first round. Even in the second round, the body language of Bontorin was extremely laboured. And I just think if a guy like Ray Borg senses that on you, you're going to be in a really, really grueling fight very soon. So that's what I'm picturing here. I'm also factoring in this is 5,000 feet above sea level. So if we hit that third round, we're really going to see the guy take over with the better conditioning. And I think that guy is Ray Borg. He's fought a lot of good guys over the years. And if he sees a laboured, fatigued Bontorin, I do believe he will take him to the mat. Bontorin, like I said, a black belt in BJJ. But Ray Borg will look to test him there. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Ray Borg via decision. And we take a look at some odds for that fight. Ray Borg coming in minus 145, Bontorin plus 120. That's a completely respectable line for both guys. Ray Borg rightfully the favourite. Bontorin, like I said, it's evident he holds good power in his hands. And maybe he even gets a submission on the mat against Ray Borg. Who knows? But I like Ray Borg in this spot. I think he's a proven guy. He's a grinder. He's always willing to grapple with you. And that's what I feel in this one. I just feel a conditioning battle, you know, just a Ray Borg type of fight is what I feel. So yeah, Ray Borg minus 145, I'm willing to go with that. Fight number 5, we have Scott Hot Sauce Holtzman versus Jim A10 Miller, and this is another very, very decent fight to think about. So Scott Holtzman comes into this fight 6 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. I used to look at Scott as just a basic average 155er, just a guy who deserved to be in the UFC, but never going to crack that top 15, you know, not really going to impress me too much. But, you know, my thoughts on Scott have really reshaped over the years. You know, I think this guy is a very, very decent 155er now. He started out as a BJJ practitioner. He's a very strong wrestler. His takedown defense is extremely underrated. And something I've noticed in his last 3 fights is his conditioning. His conditioning is extremely underrated as well. Even in that second and third round, he looks great. You know, you look at the fight against Alan Patrick, goes out in the third round with real intentions, real power, and gets a finish against a really, really good guy who was 15-1 at the time. So, yeah, Scott Holtzman, man, I think, you know, really decent 155er. Had a bit of trouble against Nick Lentz recently. Nick Lentz is a veteran southpaw, a little bit like Jim Miller. So the opponent, Jim A10 Miller, comes into this fight 20 wins, 12 losses, 1 no contest inside the UFC. This will be his 34th UFC fight. So yeah, it's fair to say a true veteran of the game. Jim is extremely well rounded, a very good MMA wrestler, a black belt in BJJ. He's been striking for a very long time. Just you know, he's done it all. He's seen it all. He's done it all. He can do it all. Jim Miller is a veteran of the game. So looking at this fight, thinking about this fight in my head, both guys love a firefight. So, you know, Scott Holtzman can put out Miller at any point. I think Miller could even put out Scott at any point, you know. If Dong Juan Ma is stunning and dropping Scott Holtzman, Jim Miller, man, he's an experienced striker. So the firefight, if there is a firefight in this one, it's going to be very interesting to watch. I also haven't mentioned both guys love to invest in the low kick. So it's going to be very interesting to see who wins that battle as well. I think if this fight hits the mat, obviously Jim Miller has great jiu-jitsu. Scott Holtzman, like I said though, a very strong wrestler. You know, I feel he could avoid the submission if he's on top. It's a very cool fight to think about from many ways. But I just think Jim Miller has taken a lot of damage, man. And if Scott can connect flush in a firefight, I think it could end very badly for Jim. So for those reasons, I'm going to stick with the guy I have really reshaped my thoughts on over the last 2 years. I'm going to stick with Scott Holtzman here, and I'm going to take him to win via TKO in round number 1. And we take a look at some odds. We have Jim Miller, man, coming in plus 115, plus 120, and Scott Holtzman minus 135, minus 140. So that line really resembles all of my thoughts on this fight. You know, there's so many ways you can look at it. Both guys love to kick low. Both guys hold real power. Both guys love a firefight. Scott Holtzman, you know, real good conditioning, strong up against the fence. Had some real problems breaking from the clinch with Nick Lentz. So if Jim Miller can take the back up against the fence, really watch out for that too. But yeah, Scott Holtzman, man, I think if he can start to tag Jim Miller up, potentially get into a firefight, it could be a nice bonus for him on the night. So at minus 145, that's what I'm willing to go with here. Fight number 6 on this card, another very decent matchup. We have John, the Magician Dodson, going up against Nathaniel, the Prospect Wood. And we're going to start with the more experienced guy here, the magician. So John Dodson comes into this fight 9 wins, 6 losses inside the UFC. A very experienced guy. He's fought a lot of very good competition over the years. However, when we look at these guys fight, we do have to watch the most recent fights. That gives us the most information when we look at a matchup that hasn't taken place. And when we look at John Dodson in his most recent fights, especially Jimmy Rivera, just no output, just nothing, no poise, no danger, just moving backwards all fight, just no danger from John. It didn't look like he wanted to be in that fight. It doesn't look like he wants to be there. You know, really coming towards the end of his career. You know, he could fight for quite a few more years, John Dodson. But he is out of his prime. He doesn't look like the John Dodson of 5 years ago. You know, just nothing against Jimmy Rivera. And then you look at the fight against Peter Yan. And I know a lot of us appreciate Peter Yan. We know that guy is real nasty. But once again, John Dodson backpedals all fight. And it doesn't look like he wants to be inside the octagon. You know, I have to feel that passion from you when I watch you fight. You know, it doesn't matter who you are. I need to feel that passion. And I don't get it from John Dodson. Now, I'm not saying he can't win this fight, because most recently I said I don't feel passion when I watch Holly Holm fight, but she went out there with a good game plan. None of us really enjoyed watching it, but at the end of the day, a win is the most important thing when you step inside the octagon, right? You have to win to project your career, and Holly went in there and she grappled. So it's going to be interesting to see what John Dodson comes out. I don't feel much when I watch him fight recently. But he is a very experienced guy. He moves very quick. His speed is very good. So yeah, footwork and speed is what John is best at. So I can kind of understand why he's backpedaling in these fights, because his movement is very good. But yeah, I just don't feel poise from John Dodson. The opponent, Nathaniel Wood, comes into this fight 3-0 inside the UFC. A very well-rounded fighter who seems to be getting better and better every fight. This guy is a very strong wrestler. His top control is very, very strong. You know, for the weight class, man, he is a strong guy. His kicking game is something that's going to be spoken about more and more every time this guy fights. His inside calf kick to southpaws is something that's really beautiful. You know, if anyone that doesn't know, Nathaniel Wood does like to fight southpaws over conventional fighters, and John Dodson is a southpaw fighter. Now, that inside calf kick is what I'm talking about. You're really going to see that in this fight, especially if John Dodson backpedals and looks to fight on the outer ring inside the octagon. You're going to see that lead leg eaten up by Nathaniel Wood. Nathaniel is also a very technical boxer. His punches up top are very precise, very calculated. You know, he's not just going in there and throwing leather like a guy like Bontorin, who's a BJJ practitioner. Nathaniel Wood is looking to be the best he can at every art he trains in. You know, he's really picking his shots up top. So, yeah, man, looking at this fight, it's really hard to see past Nathaniel Wood. I think he's a very talented fighter. His grappling is good. His speed, his conditioning, his strength, his power, his boxing, his kicking. I see it all when I look at Nathaniel Wood. And when I watch John fight, I feel a guy who's coming towards the end. So yeah, I'm going to take Nathaniel Wood in this one. He's going to go low with that inside calf kick to the southpaw lead leg. Potentially shoot for a takedown whenever he wants. And I think his boxing is going to look very good. So for those reasons, Nathaniel Wood via a dominant decision. And we take a look at some odds in this fight. Nathaniel Wood coming in at -160, John Dodson +130. Man, it's a little... I would have thought Nathaniel Wood would have been at least -220. Because we've got Rulian down here at -200. And I don't feel like he's going to be extremely dominant. But Nathaniel Wood, man, I feel domination in this fight. And that's no knock on John Dodson. Well, maybe it is a little knock, but That's just what I feel from John recently, man. He's not looking to hurt you inside the octagon. The way he went back to his corner in the first round against Jimmy Rivera, just go back and watch it on Fight Pass. It's so strange. Like, he doesn't sit down. He's looking at his coaches for acknowledgement, as if to say that was a good round, right? I don't feel danger from John, and I feel danger from this up and coming guy in Nathaniel Wood. So for those reasons, at least 2 parlays on Nathaniel Wood there at -160. Moving into the next one, we have Tim the Dirty Bird Means versus Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez. Another decent fight to think about. So we'll start with the veteran, Tim Means. He comes into this fight 11 wins, 8 losses, 1 no contest inside the UFC. This will be his 21st UFC fight. So once again, it's fair to say another veteran on this card. Tim Means is a very experienced striker. He's been striking for at least 20 years, maybe a little bit more. Looking at his most recent performances, Thiago Alves, we all look at that fight and say beautiful, beautiful finish. I believe it was the left hook, and then he even went into a guillotine up against the fence, I believe. Really, really nice finish. But one thing I want to point out from that performance, Tim Means put Thiago Alves up against the fence. Now, he doesn't look to grapple too much in his fights. So to see this intelligence from Tim Means, being the experienced guy he is, I love to see that. He's a striker, and we know what we get when we watch Tim Means, but he's looking to be unpredictable inside the octagon, looking to still evolve in his career, and that tells me Tim Means very much wants to compete still. The opponent, Daniel Rodriguez, comes into this fight making his UFC debut, 10-1 as a pro. Also fought on the Contender Series, had a decent performance there. Rodriguez is primarily a boxer and a BJJ practitioner inside the octagon. Trains under Eddie Bravo at 10th Planet BJJ. So he has good jiu-jitsu when the fight hits the mat. When he's on the feet, he's swinging bombs. Has a beautiful right hook, beautiful left hook, left overhand. It doesn't matter what hand hits you. He has very good power in both hands. Now both of these guys are southpaws, and Tim Means is an extremely experienced striker. So when I look at this fight in my head, man, I just see Tim Means using that veteran experience. He's going to be looking down the barrel at a southpaw, and I think he's going to see a lot of holes in Daniel Rodriguez. However, I have been a little bit back and forth on this fight, and I think it's because of Chaos Williams recently. Now, Chaos Williams went into that fight and we all knew he had big power, but we saw the experience, the Taekwondo background of Morono, his BJJ, training at a Fortis too, a very decent camp. And Morono was basically in a firefight straight away, so it makes you wonder, is Tim Means going to give Rodriguez that firefight, or is he going to be forced into a firefight? From his most recent performance against Thiago Alves with the intelligence of putting him up against the fence, that tells me Tim Means really is thinking about these matchups. And I think he's just going to pick his shots, look to be the Tim Means we know, and potentially put Daniel Rodriguez up against the fence a few times. So for those reasons, I'm going to stick with the veteran Tim Means to win via decision in this one. I don't think he's going to put away Daniel Rodriguez. I just think 15 minutes of Tim Means being the guy we love, the guy we know, the Dirty Bird. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. The odds in that one, man, that's a heavy one, just like Morono, but you can't argue too much. Tim Means coming in at -250, D-Rod coming back at +230, +220. And man, you can understand why. Tim is a very experienced guy. He's a great southpaw striker. Daniel Rodriguez has that 10th Planet PJJ. But his striking, man, it seems more power. And, Chaos Williams is proof that power can win. We see it every week. and Nico Price has extreme power. So yeah, it's a tough one to predict and a tough one to load up too much on Tim because of the price, but I do have to stick with the veteran on this one. Alright homies, that's all the prelims broken down and predictions made for. As always, make sure you leave a comment to engage on all of these fights on this card. This is the time to smoke up. I know most of you have already been smoking if you do smoke, but this is officially the smoke break. So yeah, let's spark up and then get to the giveaway of that t-shirt. Amen, my homies, amen. Okay, giveaway. Roll the tape. Okay guys, here's the giveaway. Here's everyone's name entered for the t-shirt. I thank you all for entering this competition. If your name's not here, I'm very sorry, but I'm very sure if you put down a comment, your name should be here. So we're just gonna pick a random name, and if you win, please make sure you leave a comment with your Twitter name and message me on Twitter. So we're gonna pick a random name, and if you win, that is Malik Smith. So make sure you leave a comment with your Twitter name so I can verify you're the winner, and make sure you message me on Twitter. Thank you. Okay, so that was the winner of the giveaway. Make sure you follow the instructions in leaving a comment with your Twitter name and message me on Twitter, and I will get that t-shirt sent to you straight away. I am going to be releasing more t-shirts as well. I've already got a new t-shirt on the works, literally. I had so much fun putting together that t-shirt, and the amount of you guys who appreciated me for that and left a comment with UFC GA, you know, you wanted that t-shirt. Some of you even said, man, I'll buy that t-shirt. I really wish I had a huge following or a bigger following than what I have now. But like I say, man, I'm extremely grateful for all of you guys. All of the new guys too, if you subscribed last week or 3 weeks ago, or, you know, if you've been here from the start, I appreciate all of you guys, you know. But I am going to be bringing out a new t-shirt. So when I hit like 3,000 subscribers, like a new landmark, which is only in 200 subscribers time, so maybe we're going to be there very soon. As soon as I hit that, I'm going to bring out a new t-shirt and do the same thing, where you just leave a comment, I'll pick a random person. Hopefully I can give away more than one this time. But yeah, I appreciate all of you guys, honestly. A few comments in this smoke break whilst we're smoking and just having a little relax from the breakdowns. Ryan Bottinelli, what a name, bro. UFC GA, once again, man, I'm glad I'm subscribed. The attitude and communication on the channel is perfect. Thanks for taking the time to do these. Man, that's a beautiful comment. You know, those type of comments inspire me and motivate me every single week. And I know I say it every single week as well. But man, I'm just very grateful for the community that I'm building. Every single day, man, I'm grateful for this. And thank you very much for understanding the communication on this channel, because I feel the same way, Ryan. I really do. And I see the comments and I see the maturity level from, you know, there's always going to be one or two who let themselves down. You know, I don't really class immature people in the comments as a part of this community. Now, I'm not saying you can't disagree, but when you come across as an idiot, when you come across as rude, when I see you calling people an idiot for something they've said in the comments, you know, I class you as a troll. But even when people disagree in the comments, right, 98% of the time, it's always such a good conversation to read. And I can tell both people have, you know, enjoyed the debate they've had. You know, I really feel that in this community. I love that. Lucha Bone. I hope I said that right. Lucha Bone. UFC GA, time for a smoke break from Canada. Well, I hope, Lucha, you're tuning in right now. I hope you're smoking. The Canadian people on this channel are dope people. I love you people. My American fiance does say, she still says to this day, Canadians are a myth, but I don't believe her. I know you exist in my community. I love you, Canadians. Spark this back up again. Ground zero. Sorry, I put the like button in a twister. KGB doesn't have enough power or accuracy to keep Murphy off of her. She's not good enough at submissions to catch Murphy. Lauren will put a pace on her and she can't match, and this will be more Murphy via decision or KO. Well, man, you put the like button in a twister, and I asked you to head kick, not headbutt. Don't ever headbutt the like button, by the way. I asked you to head kick the like button, and you've put it in a twister. So you're a savage for that. Your call on Lauren Murphy, agree to disagree, disagree to agree. Good call. Tupac coming in, head kick the like button. Yeah, don't headbutt the like button. Always head kick it. Here's the poll from last week. So we had 77% on John Jones, 23% on Dom, 373 votes. Make sure you go and vote on the Corey Anderson versus Jan Blachowicz. If you want your say on that main event, leave it in the comments, leave it on the community tab. Engage in this community. I love you all. Okay guys, I hope you've had a beautiful smoke break. Let's get back to these fights. Moving into the next one, we have Yancy, the Kid, Medeiros versus Lando, Groovy Vannata. And this is another decent matchup to think about, man. We'll start with Yancy. So Yancy comes into this fight 6 wins, 6 losses, 1 no contest inside the UFC. Yancy is a part of that Diaz community. You know, he has that style. He loves to use his boxing inside the octagon. Has very good length. Uses that length very well. You know, always pops the jab out there. Just has that Diaz style, man. You know, you really feel it when you watch him fight. Also has the conditioning to use that style as well. We've seen that time after time in the octagon from Yancy. Just a really fun fighter to watch, man. Just a beautiful striker, you know. Uses his kicks very well with his length. But it's mainly his boxing and his conditioning that sees him through these fights. Obviously, you look at the fight against Gregor Gillespie, completely dominated with the takedowns. Just couldn't get back to his feet, and when he got back to his feet, he's not fighting the hands, he's going straight back to the mat. So the takedown, you know, Yancy does struggle a little bit with that, but when if he can keep the fight standing, that boxing, that length, you know, it really looks nice from Yancy Medeiros. The opponent, Lando Vannata, comes into this fight 2 wins, 4 losses, 2 draws inside the UFC. So that on its own, you know, you hear that record, that on its own tells us who Lando Vannata is. He's never going to be a champion, and if you've seen this guy fight, or if you haven't seen this guy fight, let me tell you, he is extremely entertaining to watch. Just has a crazy unorthodox style, loves to throw spinning kicks, loves to throw a wide variety of kicks. Just a really entertaining guy. You know, you go back and watch that Tony Ferguson fight, and he nearly finished Tony a couple times, and a few fighters can say that, to be fair. But Lando, man, he just has a crazy fun style to watch, and you know, he's had a couple draws, 4 losses. He's never going to be this guy we look at and think he's such an amazing fighter. You know, he's going to challenge for being one of the greatest one day. He's never going to be that guy, and the UFC know that. You know, his contract most likely says just go out and entertain. Like, they don't care about his record. But yeah, looking at this fight, it's a fun one, right? I'd say the conditioning advantage is definitely on Yancy's side. So if the fight hits the 3rd round, being at 5,000 feet above sea level, we really could see the fight being decided in that round, if it's 1-1 heading into the 3rd. But Lando, man, has such a wide variety of kicks, and I feel like I've kind of seen this fight already. If you go back and watch Yancy Medeiros against John Makdessi, it's kind of what I picture in this fight. But the difference is John wasn't willing to take that fight to the mat. I think Lando, you know, being the brown belt in BJJ that he is, good jiu-jitsu, I think he could look to take this fight to the mat. And, you know, Mark Diakisi teaching him a hard lesson. Mark was able to take him down a couple times, end up on top and win rounds that way. I think Lando could maybe look to step away from the entertaining side of the game and really look to use a game plan in this fight. Maybe take down Yancy Medeiros, look to win the kicking battle, of course, in that first round. But man, it's such a hard fight to predict, because you look at some of the jabs Tony Ferguson was hitting Lando with, and Yancy Medeiros is a great straight boxer. You know, he throws a lot of straight jabs, and that length is very good inside the octagon. It's a tough one to predict, and you can look at it quite a few ways. But I just think Lando Vannata is going to go out there, win that kicking battle, and potentially 1 or 2 takedowns could be the difference in this fight. So for those reasons, that's why I'm going to side with Lando in such a good matchup here. And I'm going to take Lando to win via decision. And we take a look at some odds in that matchup. And man, look at those odds. It completely reflects what most of us, I'm assuming, are going to be picturing for this fight, you know. It can go so many ways, and you can look at the conditioning side, the boxing side, the frame side of it, the kicking side of it, the BJJ, the wrestling. It's a very hard one to get right in your head. I'm assuming this is going to be a really good fight to watch. And the odds, Lando coming in -110, +100. Yancy -105, -102, -110. You know, we've basically got a pick 'em there. Yeah, the UFC, really beautiful matchmaking on that one. Moving into fight number 9, we have Brock Chatataska Weaver versus Rodrigo Cazula Vargas. Another tough one to predict. Brock Weaver comes into this fight making his UFC debut, 14-4 as a pro. For those of you who don't really know much about Brock Weaver, I'm sure we're going to find out a lot more about him in this debut. But for those of you who don't know, this guy's a complete dog. At 16 years old, he used his cousin's ID to get a fight in a local bar at 16. You know, this guy's fought in bare knuckle boxing. He just wants to scrap. You know, it doesn't matter where it is, who it's with. This guy's a fighter. You know, he's not going to be the best technical fighter in the world, but this guy just wants to scrap. And here he is in the biggest MMA organization in the world. Massive credit to Mr. Brock Weaver. He's a scrapper. You know, he looks to use his boxing, whether it's in a ring, inside an octagon. He's looking to just be a dog in there, man. If he can beat you on toughness, he's gonna. If he can walk you down, make you crumble, he's gonna. Looking at his Contender Series fight, I wasn't too impressed, I'll be honest. He did get stuck against the fence a little bit in that fight. His takedown defense didn't look too good, but then he started to press his opponent against the fence a little bit, and I felt that started to happen when his opponent realized, man, this guy's a dog and he's not going to stop, you know. But yeah, I feel that from Brock, man. He's just looking to do one thing pretty much inside the octagon. He will eat your shots to give his shots. He's going to be the type of guy who potentially has that like 7-4, 7-5 record, and we just think, is it going to be the dog that turns up, or is it going to be the guy that's completely beat by the more technical opponent? That's what I feel from Brock Weaver. The opponent, Rodrigo Vargas, comes into this fight 0 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Looking at his UFC debut, this guy also doesn't have good takedown defense. Alex De Silva was able to get down Vargas with ease. He kept him on the mat with ease as well. So yeah, the grappling, when you look at Brock Weaver versus Vargas, I don't really know who's going to be the guy shooting for the takedown. You know, that's tough to decide for me in this fight. So let me know in the comments, if you're listening to this part of the breakdown, who do you think has the grappling advantage in this one? If this fight's kept at kicking distance on the feet, that's where I think Rodrigo's going to have success in this fight. Looking at his debut, for the moments he was kept on the feet, the guy looks like a very decent kicker. And then you look at like the head kick finish prior to the UFC. Yeah, I'm happy to say Rodrigo Vargas is a better kicker than Brock Weaver. Is he a better puncher? I'm not sure. I see power in Rodrigo as a puncher. Technique, not the best in the world, but as for a kicker, if he can keep it at kicking distance, I see him having a good time in this fight. So once again, I'm faced with another fight that's really tough to pick on. As for the grappling, it's really hard to decide who's going to be winning there. The kicking, I think Rodrigo. Brock, I think, is maybe tougher than Rodrigo. I think the ability to take this fight to the mat could be the winning strategy in this fight. I think the rounds could be very close, and whoever gets that takedown could be winning these very close rounds that I'm imagining in my head. I think Rodrigo is going to land quite a few kicks from a distance, and that could be the story of this fight. So for those reasons, I'm going to pick against Brock Weaver in his debut, and I'm going to take Rodrigo Vargas via decision. And we look at the odds in this fight. Man, it's heavy. We got Brock Weaver minus 280, minus 270. Vargas coming in over the plus 200 mark, plus 220. So yeah, man, a lot of people on the dog Brock Weaver, who isn't a dog in this one. You know, he's a heavy favourite. But we're going to see that dog mentality inside the octagon. I hope Vargas is ready to use his kicks from a distance. Yeah, really good matchup, man. But I'm leaning towards the heavy underdog in this one. Moving into the 10th fight on this card, we have Montana De La Rosa versus Mara Romero Borella. And we're going to start with Mrs. De La Rosa. So Montana comes into this fight 3 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Primarily a BJJ practitioner, a purple belt I believe. Looking back at her most recent fights against Andrea Lee, Montana threw a lot of jabs in that fight. Really standard, predictable striking. She likes to use her calf kick a little bit, but you know, same with her husband. You know, doesn't really commit to his striking. Likes to open up with the calf kick. I feel the same from Montana. She uses a lot of jabs, isn't really looking to hurt her opponent on the feet, and opens up with low kicks. Her best work, just like her husband, comes on the mat. You know, she is a BJJ practitioner, so she's going to have to take this fight to the mat, I believe, to get a win in this fight. Her opponent, Mara Romero Borella, comes into this fight 2-2 inside the UFC. She's a black belt in judo and a blue belt in BJJ. Her groundwork in her debut against Kalindra Faria was beautiful, so a very, very good blue belt, I believe. She's also a black belt in kickboxing, and you see moments of that against Lauren Murphy. You know, she lost that fight, don't get me wrong, but there was moments in that first round, that second round, I was very impressed with Borella. So, you know, although she got the loss, she had a loss in that one, bad knee, horrible TKO from Lauren Murphy. But I was impressed with moments from Borella. She looked quick, she looked powerful, her kicks, her movement. I really liked it in that fight. And she did fight Caitlin Chikagian. I was at that fight in North Carolina live. And you know, when you fight a girl like that, your black belt gets better, you know, and you see that against Lauren Murphy for the moments she was in that fight. I really liked what I saw from Borella. So looking at this fight, I feel De La Rosa has a clear path. She has to take this fight to the mat, and I feel she could get a finish there if she does. However, I only think she gets this fight to the mat if she can hurt Borella. I don't think she's going to be able to shoot for a takedown and look to get Borella down there. I see real strength from Borella. I see a nice jab, I see power, and I see good movement. So I think it's going to be tough from Montana De La Rosa to get this fight to the mat. If she can hurt Borella and look to work from there on the mat, then potentially. But I think Borella can keep this fight upright. She has good grappling herself, good power and good movement. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Mara Romero Borella via decision. And we take a look at some odds in this fight. Man, we have Borella coming in plus 145, plus 150. Rosa coming back minus 170. That's interesting. So a lot of people are leaving Borella after that TKO to Lauren Murphy. It's kind of understandable, but I just don't feel power from Montana on the feet. I see a lot of predictable strikes, and you can say the same for Lauren Murphy, but at least she has that dog mentality and power to her punches. I don't feel dog mentality from Montana, and I don't feel power in her punches. So it will be interesting to see if Montana can get this fight to the mat without hurting Borella. Because personally, I think Borella is good enough to keep this fight upright. So yeah, plus 150. I'm willing to ride with that. Devin Brown Bear Clark versus Daquan Townsend. And we're going to start with Devin first. So Devin comes into this fight 4 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a wrestler inside the octagon. Also a middleweight for me, fighting at 205. I do believe he is undersized at 205. But when he's able to win the wrestling battle and the conditioning battle, it looks very, very good for Devin Clark at 205. Now, if he isn't able to bully his opponent with his wrestling, if he doesn't see his opponent fading from the grappling, then it looks very dangerous for Devin Clark on the feet. The opponent, Daquan Townsend, comes into this fight 0 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. Talking about Clark being undersized, I also prefer Daquan at 185. Now, he fought literally 16 or 17 days ago against Bevon Lewis, completely outclassed in that fight. Just, Bevan's just a better kicker, better grappler, just completely outclassed. But he is having a quick turnaround here, wants to get back in there, looking to overturn those 2 losses inside the octagon. Now, it's an interesting fight. Like I said, both guys I feel should probably be fighting at 185. I would give the wrestling advantage to Devin Clark. We have seen Daquan Townsend struggle with grappling inside the octagon in his 2 fights so far. So if Devin Clark shoots, Daquan will probably go to the mat. Now, Daquan is losing through grappling as well. So he is looking to get better there. He is going to be anticipating the shot of Devin Clark. Now, if this fight can just be kept upright, I really do think Daquan Townsend has a chance in this fight. He has a very quick jab for his size. He pops that jab out there really quick. Now, if you go back and watch his debut, I believe, he starts popping a jab, and even Michael Bisping just starts, he's amazed. He's amazed with how quick the jab is. So if Daquan can get that going in this fight, look to break the nose of Devin Clark, maybe that will force some desperation out of Devin into shooting, and now it's predictable takedowns that we can defend. Or Devin Clark can get that takedown without having that popping jab in his face, and then it can look like a Devin Clark fight. There's 2 ways you can look at this fight. I think Daquan Townsend does have very good power on the feet. He is surprisingly quick before he's fatigued. So yeah, this fight really can go either way. But I just think, man, Devin Clark recently, he looks to quit when the going gets tough. A little bit like Andre Ewell. When it goes well, it goes very well. But when it starts to get a little bit tough, now it looks tougher than it should be. That's what I feel when I watch Devin Clark. So yeah, he could get the takedown and look to maul Daquan. Or Daquan could stop that takedown, stuff the takedown. Or even if round 2 starts and the fight's back on the feet, that's inspiration for Daquan. I'm going to side this time with Daquan to get his first win inside the UFC. I haven't taken him yet in his 2 fights. I know a lot of you guys are going to be on the wrestling of Devin Clark, But I just feel, man, he's going to get it this time. I think his striking is going to be the difference inside the octagon. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Daquan Townsend via TKO in round number 1. And we take a look at some odds for that fight. Man, that doesn't surprise me. Well, it surprises me a little bit, to be honest, but not too much. Daquan Townsend coming in plus 250, plus 240. Yeah, I mean, he's losing through grappling. He's losing through explosion, kicking. He doesn't look great inside the octagon. But both of these guys, I feel, are naturally 185ers fighting at 205. And if he can keep it on the feet, I think he can hurt Devin Clark. But Devin Clark is a very good wrestler. Like a very, very strong wrestler. When Joe Rogan watches Devin fight, he always refers to his thighs looking like tree stumps. So, yeah, man, Devin Clark is very strong. And if he can fight his fight, he has a very good chance. But Daquan, man, has power and he can catch Devin. And at plus 230, I'm riding with it. Co-main event, we have Diego Nightmare Sanchez versus Michel Pereira. And we're going to start with the veteran, another veteran on this card. Diego Sanchez comes into this fight 18 wins, 12 losses inside the UFC. This will be his 31st UFC fight. Just unbelievable, man. Fighting for over 20 years, a true fighter. Just like Jim Miller and Tim Means, he's seen it all, he can do it all. Just a true fighter, man. High school state champion in wrestling, a black belt in BJJ, a madman, a true warrior of the octagon is Diego Sanchez. So taking a look at his most recent fights, if you look at the Craig White performance and the Mickey Gall performance, it's clear to see Diego Sanchez is winning these fights through the takedowns. And that's a big part of how Michel Pereira lost against Tristan Connolly. So moving into the opponent, Michel Pereira, he comes into this fight 1 win, 1 loss inside the UFC. And just like Diego, you know, Diego's a madman. The best definition of Michel Pereira is he's an absolute madman. Crazy footwork, flipping inside the octagon, kicking off the cage, flying knees. He's crazy, right? Everything he does requires a huge amount of energy. And it goes both ways, right? If it goes beautiful, it looks like the debut, right? That crazy movement, that crazy explosive energy drags the opponent into, oh God, what's next? And if you become, oh God, what's next, the way Danny Roberts did, it's going to end so horribly for you. Now, look at the fight against Tristan Connolly. Tristan came out and pressed Michel Pereira real quick, and that's when Michel Pereira started to get crazy. But it wasn't on his watch. It was forced out of him. And when Tristan Connolly survived all of it, now he's so exhausted. He is so exhausted, and he's there to be taken down. He's there to be controlled. So with Michel Pereira, we're going to get the best of both worlds a lot in his UFC career. We're going to see moments that make us think, oh my good God, that was nasty. And there's going to be moments where we think, this guy is just such an idiot, man. Like, he loses like this every time. We're going to get both, literally. And that's the part of being a UFC fan. We have to appreciate that not every guy is going to be the greatest, and we have to take them for what they are. Michel Pereira is a madman, and I don't think he should change. I think he should stay the same. Be the entertainer you are. Sometimes it's going to look great. Sometimes it's going to look horrible. But just do it. Just be the same guy, because that's the guy we all want to see inside the octagon. So, like I said, man, it's really going to be one or the other. In that first 5 minutes, especially the first 3 minutes, Diego Sanchez is in for a real dangerous time. Because if any of that crazy stuff lands that takes huge energy, that you're just kind of waiting for, and you don't know what's coming, and then something comes that you're not anticipating, and it lands, it's devastating. But if Diego can get past that first round, then I really think he just ragdolls him for the rest of the fight. It's one or the other. Probably shouldn't be making this pick, man, but I'm going to go with the craziness. I just think Diego's been in a lot of wars, and if you can tag that skull with extreme power and energy, I think Diego's going to go down. And you look at the way Matt Brown hit him with that elbow, just crumbled Diego. And we haven't even brought in that Diego is a small welterweight. He's not a big welterweight. He's got a lot of energy. His conditioning's really good. But he isn't a big welterweight. And Michel Pereira struggles to cut to 170, man. So in that first round is the real danger for Diego. And I'm going to go with it, man. After the first round, it's really Diego's fight to lose. But I'm going to go with that craziness from Michel Pereira. So I'm going to take Michel Pereira via TKO in round number 1. And we look at some odds. And those odds are a little surprising. I really thought those odds were going to be the other way around. Michel Pereira minus 160. Diego Sanchez plus 130. I really thought we was going to see plus on Michel Pereira because his style really is hit or miss. It's going to be beautiful if it works. It's going to be horrible if it don't. Diego's the type of guy who most likely can get past that first round, but he isn't a big welterweight. And if it does land, if it does in those first 3 minutes, I think it could be devastating, just like that Matt Brown elbow. So really, man, this is a tough fight to bet on. And I'm not going to bet on Michel Pereira a lot. Maybe 2 parlays at the very most, because Diego has a good shot. But yeah, I'm going to side with the craziness on this one. Make sure you leave a comment though and let us know. Who are you taking in this one? Main event time, my homies. And make sure you've armbarred that like button. And let me know how it went in the comments after you've done that. Corey Overtime Anderson versus Jan Blachowicz, a very, very decent 205 main event. We're going to start with Corey Anderson. Corey comes into this fight 10 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC, primarily a wrestler inside the octagon. Ben Askren actually advised Corey Anderson to get into MMA because Corey Anderson is naturally a pure wrestler, just like Ben. But it's a little bit funny to me that Corey Anderson actually evolved into a very decent boxer inside the octagon, a decent kicker, just an MMA guy now is Corey Anderson, and Ben Askren just a pure wrestler still inside the octagon, although he has decided to not keep fighting. Corey Anderson, naturally a pure wrestler, but he's looking better and better every fight. Now got a huge win over Johnny Walker, fired a big overhand right in that fight, and that was the start of a huge barrage from Corey Anderson in that fight. So the worry for me with Corey Anderson, and I'm sure all of you have the same worry as I do, is the chin of Corey Anderson. We have seen it cracked. Jimmy Manuwa destroyed that chin. OSP went high, and it was devastating to that chin. So yeah, a few times the chin has been broken, and he hasn't got the best chin in the world. But what he is very, very good at is wrestling. If he can use that fence to get you down, you're going for a ride. And if you get back to your feet, the chances are you're going to be fighting up against the fence. You're going to be defending takedowns again very soon. He has a relentless gas tank, and he's looking to put you in a grueling fight. And looking at his last fight, man, like I said, there's evolution to Corey. He isn't just a pure wrestler anymore. He will fire a big overhand right, and it can hurt you. He has very good, decent boxing power. The opponent, Jan Blachowicz, comes into this fight 8 wins, 5 losses inside the UFC. A black belt in BJJ, a very decent Muay Thai striker. Jan speaks about the Polish power. Is the Polish power real? I would say yes. You don't break someone's jaw unless you have real power. Looking at Jan's most recent fights inside the octagon, Luke Rockhold and Jacare. 2 fairly decent performances. The Luke Rockhold one more impressive than the Jacare one. But one thing I have noticed from this fight for Jan, from these 2 fights actually, he almost waits on the outside to defend the takedown. If you look against Luke, he's almost anticipating are you going to take me down? And he's happy to fight on the back foot in that fight. And he got pressed against the fence. Luke spent over 3 minutes trying to take him down, and the takedown defense was very good up against the fence. And at the end of that round, Luke Rockhold looked like he'd been in a sauna. He was that exhausted. Against Jacare, same thing. He kind of waited on that outer line inside the octagon for the takedown, and he was happy to defend up against the fence. Same kind of thing. A lot of that fight against Jacare was played out up against the fence, and a lot of the time, pretty much the whole time, Jan Blachowicz avoided the takedown. Now here's my problem for this one. If Corey Anderson can use the fence the way Luke and Jacare had the chance to use the fence, I think Jan Blachowicz is going for a ride. Now both of these guys have fought before, and Jan was taken for a ride a few times. I don't really see it being much different. Like I say, the worry for me is Corey Anderson's chin. If Jan can connect with the power, I doubt any of us would be surprised if Corey went to sleep. But if it gets past the first round, the second round, I really think Corey Anderson is just going to continue to do the same thing, and that's use the fence for the takedown and look to put Jan in an extremely grueling contest. So yeah, I just see the wrestling, the relentlessness, the conditioning of Corey being the difference in this fight. But there is a way to bring in money if Jan wins, so I will speak about that on the insight. But for me, I'm going to have to take Corey Anderson to win this rematch. And I'm going to take him via 25-minute decision. And we look at the odds in this fight. We have Corey Anderson minus 220. Jan Blachowicz coming back plus 175. Those odds are a little bit wrong, man. I wouldn't have Corey such a deep favourite, because his chin is very worrying. You know, it is a worrying chin, and Jan does have power. So at any moment, Jan could put out Corey, but at the same time, every takedown, I think Jan is going to become more tired and more tired, and that power is going to fade round by round. So I can kind of see how Corey's minus 220. But yeah, man, my pick is Corey Anderson for this rematch main event. As always, guys, leave down your comments, who you're taking, main event, co-main, prelims, all of that good stuff. And yeah, I'll catch you in the comments. Peace.